Today is the beginning of Advent, the liturgical time preparing us for Christmas. As we prepare to celebrate the first coming of Christ at his nativity, this season is also a time of renewal and conversion to help us keep our hearts fixed on his second coming. So, what should we do to prepare ourselves, to renew ourselves for the Lord? The gospel for this first Sunday of Advent gives us some direction, as Jesus himself, during the final days of his life on earth, tells his disciple what his second coming will be like. Our Lord invites us to lift our eyes and open our hearts to receive him. Advent leads us to Christmas, and from there to the hope of the glorious second coming of Christ. He calls us to a personal encounter with him. Each day he calls us. Each day he wants to draw us out of our darkness, our fears, our discouragement, and all the disappointments of this life. In this gospel, we can find two different ways of living on earth. And as always, we have a choice. Either live with our heads held high or with our hearts clouded in darkness. We Christians are called to live with our eyes raised to heaven, knowing we are children of God by our baptism, truly members of the royal family of Christ. We are called to discover the greatness of our daily life, of God's love that surrounds us in all our daily circumstances, in our family and friendships, and in our work and rest. Christ gives us his light, his strength, and his very life to enable us to see and receive him in everything we do. Even in everyday moments of life, he awaits us to fill us with his grace, with his way of life and his love. But too many people live their life with hearts clouded in darkness. Our problems and difficulties, our miseries and weaknesses, our fears and deceptions, our selfishness and our pride. These close us in on ourselves. We try to satisfy our deepest desires for happiness, for abundant and overflowing life, with food that never satisfies, because deep down, we are only seeking ourselves in those moments. In today's gospel, Jesus gives us the key to live each day with our head held high. He tells us to stay awake and to pray. We need to fight against the drowsiness that is always trying to overcome us, to trap us in our own concerns, in our own problems and sorrows. It is a drowsiness that turns our capacity to love and to be loved into lethargy, that impedes us from enjoying life, that obscures what is most beautiful, the beauty of creation, the faces of our loved ones, tranquil conversation, and time spent with friends, just to name a few. Then we lose sight of the best thing of all, the real presence of Jesus Christ and the love of those around us. And then we end up filling ourselves with sadness and boredom, lamenting and complaining about the mundane things, rather than living in the moment with God. We need to stay awake in order to see beyond ourselves. Then we can see God watching over us and see where he wants to lead us. We can see his divine will and his love for us and for this world. We need to stay awake in order to probe the depths of our own heart, to grasp how and for whom he truly wants us to spend our lives. Besides calling us to stay awake, our Lord asks us to pray. He asks us to raise our eyes to heaven so that in each time of prayer, Christ may redirect our thoughts and our hearts to him, so that he may satisfy our deepest longings for happiness. And especially in this Advent season, we should make a plan and choose a time to go to confession. That is why we have so many Advent penance services, to make it easier to find a time to be reconciled to God. This Advent, we await him with our heads held high, always praying so that Jesus can draw us out of our daily concerns and worries, so that he can open our hearts to others and enable us to look at them with a loving heart.